Hello everyone, this is the Archfiend. What? You don't like the Archfiend? You so ridiculous!
I was watching a video last night from Undertaker Freak 1127, and it got me to thinking about things. It was this video talking about the how he's voting in the upcoming election, and it's the first time he's old enough to vote in a presidential election here. And it got me to thinking about things about how I never really made a political video here for you guys. I mean, I've covered a few political topics and maybe talked about something like, Jeff Boss and the Vote Here Party. See how many of you guys remember that video. I think he was douchebag number 3, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, I just want to get on my proverbial soapbox here and make one of those serious internet videos here talking about a serious topic, which I know you guys are going to have a hard time taking serious because there's, South Park dolls and Dilbert and Beavis and Butthead, and I even have a Muppets t-shirt on. See? Muppets. Keeping it real since the 70s. Since I was born in the 70s. Yeah, I'm that old. And, yeah, you're going to have a hard time. Wait. You're really going to have a hard time taking it serious, where imagine if I held this up the entire time. This is one of the Girl Fiend's shoes. Right? Imagine if I held this up the entire time. Would you be able to take this video seriously? She's going to kick my ass for showing that on camera. Anyway, politics is always something that I've held near and dear to me for a number of reasons, of which I'll get into in a second here. And I've always been for just people should be registered to vote, should go out and vote. It's your right to vote or not vote, which is fine. I don't care if you do or don't, but people really should, in my opinion. And before I start this video off, and before I get into too many details, anytime I think about politics, I think about a saying, well, not really a saying, just a thought that one of my college professors had, in that he said he never wanted to discuss his political affiliation with the students because he felt it would skew the minds unfairly. And by that he meant that he didn't want to say whether he was Republican, Democrat, or in between, or to an extreme of the two, in that if we wrote term papers for him, class projects, any sort of exams, that we'd be writing them based on what we thought would be more along his ideological baseline. So I can understand why someone like him would say that. I, however, have no problem with just talking to you guys. I don't see myself as a professor of any sorts. I'm just a guy with an opinion that can turn on a camera and talk to thousands of people and have a discussion of a topic that I have particular interest in, and that's why I'm making this video. So, with that being said, I worked for the Democratic Party for a number of years. I'm going to throw that right out on the table. I even voted for Barack Obama in 2008. And we'll get into the whole election between Obama and Romney in a second here. I got hired by the Democratic Party right out of college. I did a number of campaigns for them, ranking as low as an assistant director all the way up to a campaign director for them. And learned a lot of things, saw a lot of great places, met a lot of great people and all that good shit. But I don't work in American politics anymore. And the reason why is the more and more I learned about American politics and how the system, quote-unquote, really works, the more I despised it. The less and less I became this, hungry college student that wanted to, run out and change the world for the better, to just seeing that, that little piece of paper on my wall that signifies the degree I got from college is just, something that is a symbol of a time that's long gone, because I'm no longer that hungry kid that wants to change the world for the quote-unquote better via the political system. Because there's a number of things that are wrong with it, and to be fair, there are a number of things that are right. The American political system isn't just one big great Satan. There is a lot of good people that run for a lot of good reasons. There's a lot of good legislation that isn't just legislation that is passed for big company interest and all this other shit, even though a lot of it damn sure is. So, there's always the good with the bad, and the political institution in this nation is a perfect representation of that. However, it is something that I still take intense fondness in. I always like to, harken back to those years of when I was working with the Democratic Party and in the thick of things and the political climate and all that good shit. Anyway, I have no problem disclosing these things to you because I'm someone that just doesn't affiliate himself with one party. Now, just because I was working for the Democratic Party doesn't mean I was a Democrat. In fact, I worked for a presidential campaign of which I didn't even vote for the nominee that I was working for. What do you think about that? Sorry, John Kerry supporters. Anyway, I've always considered myself to be open-minded and never just vote party line. I think people that do that tend to close their mind out of things and just hear things that either aren't there or just are just voting because there's an R or a D next to the person's name, which I think is really dumb, for lack of a better term. Anyway, we have an election here between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama. Now, I'll tell you right off the bat, I have a, let's just say, an intense disinterest between both candidates. I really don't have much good to say about either candidate, in all honesty. Barack Obama is someone I voted for in 2008. I'll throw that card right out on the table here as well. I voted for him as more of a representation of the people that didn't want Sarah Palin anywhere near a heart attack from John McCain away from being president of the United States. I saw her as just a disgrace as a representation of power in this country, in all honesty. I mean, the fact that the world could potentially see her as our leader. Now, I know she's just basically a figurehead leader, as many presidents are, because big companies' interests really rule this nation, which is no secret. But still, she's the physical representation. She would be the physical representation as the president. And the rest of the world would be like, wow, this dimwit speaking twit is the ruler of the most powerful land in this world? Okay. Anyway, I voted for Barack Obama basically because I couldn't vote for any ticket that had someone like Sarah Palin on it. Anyway, that aside, we now have an election where two candidates are quite possibly the most polar opposite that I can remember in my lifetime following politics. Mitt Romney, we have on one hand, is, for all intents and purposes, just the rich, privileged white guy who is from a very strict sector of super Christianity. Now, not that there's anything wrong with a political affiliation of a candidate. There's taking a religion serious, and then there's religions like Mormonism. Now, I know you guys might be saying, well, I'm talking about someone who's I as a non-believer, I'm just basically hating on them for religion. Like, again, I don't give a shit who you believe in. But when you look into Mormonism and some of the shit, it's just like, do you really have to take it that seriously? Do you really honestly? And if you do, fine. I just personally think it's a bit more wacky. But that's my personal opinion, and we all have them. Anyway, I, in all honesty, see Mitt Romney, if he gets elected into office, I see him getting more stuff done than Barack. I see the needs of the country being met more than if Barack was running for office. I see a number of things that would potentially be better. However, I don't see Mitt Romney standing a snowball's chance in hell in winning the presidency. And as far as Barack goes, I see his first 4 years in office, potentially his final 4 years, in case he doesn't get reelected, as probably four of the most disappointing, uneventful years in presidential history, right up there with Jimmy Carter. He was someone who came into office with a majority control in Congress. That means the majority of people in Senate and the House of Representatives were registered Democrats. And he came in with this passion and this motivation. He's, you know, this young guy. He's a minority. He's, you know, the voice of people that, quote unquote, hasn't been heard from this high up and all this other shit. And I was like, man, we're finally going to see shit get done. And what did he do in his first 2 years? Nothing. He had trouble passing his legislation. He had trouble getting his referendums put out there. It was basically a very uneventful first 2 years, and then he lost that Democratic control in Congress. And I'm like, what the hell happened? Was Congress not motivated to finally get this guy who is a much better speaker than the mumbling governor from Texas in the 8 years we had to put up with him? Nothing. Nothing eventful. in the first 2 years. He did eventually pass his healthcare legislation. That's a whole different issue. I'll get to that in a second. What I see those first 2 years with a majority control in Congress under the Democratic Party as, I see that as a Congress and the ranking peers of your profession not showing faith in you. It's basically a vote of no confidence that he struggled in his first 2 years in office to get anything done that he wanted to. So I said to myself, wow, if he doesn't even get the respect of his peers that were so excited to see him get into office, how can I respect him as a citizen in this country being the ultimate decision maker? And how can I see him as doing a good job, doing a complete job? So, I see him as a very, basically, uneventful, meaningless president for the past 4 years. And these people are going to be like, well, he got his groundbreaking healthcare reform passed after numerous revisions, after months of contemplating and changes and talking and debating. By the time it finally got passed, I was like, it was a shell of what it originally was, and it's not even really a big deal anymore. It's just an irrelevant plan now that was so stripped down and so tweaked, it was so far off what its original message was. And just the original ideals in it were. And I was just like, wow, this is the big stamp that Barack, set out for to change, and he promised to get it done, and now that he got it done, it was this big just pile of crap, for lack of a better term. Crap, complete crap. It was debacle, it was a sham, it was something that took way longer than it had to do. I mean, my God, if something like healthcare reform can't get past lickety-split, then the person penning it is the problem. So, we have 4 years of the complete meaningless presidency running against the privileged, rich, white guy, which I know, just because you're privileged and rich and white doesn't mean you don't stand a shot in winning the presidency. But here's the thing. I see Mitt Romney that is someone that is completely unrelatable to the working class. Someone who's a lot like you or I, that, busts his ass for a weekly paycheck and stuff like that. Granted, I mean, I only make YouTube videos. I don't really bust my ass. I just can't have a real job besides this. Anyway, I see once people really start seeing that, he's this rich guy who doesn't disclose his taxes, even though every other presidential candidate, since that protocol has been put in place, has disclosed all their taxes. People will see that as, oh, he's this rich, privileged white guy, doesn't have to play by the rules of anyone else. Fuck that noise. That's what they get into the psyche of people, and they will see that as, and many people may be right. Yeah, he is hiding things. We all know why he's hiding things. We all know he has funds in places that they shouldn't be and stuff like that, and God knows how much he tithes to the Church of Mormonism, but look up tithing if you don't know what that is. He looks like he's hiding stuff. And people will see that. People will see that beyond what his message is. And people like that work for the Barack Obama campaign are going to run this into the ground. And they should. It's a very easy point to make. It's something that everyone can understand. It's simplistic. And it does show that he has something to hide, whether Mitt Romney wants to admit it or not, whether he has nothing to hide or not. Not releasing his taxes are something that is going to bury this guy. And that's why I don't see Mitt Romney winning this election. One of the main reasons. Now, you might be saying, well, the Richard White thing, what happened with John Kerry? He stood a very good shot against winning against George Bush, and a lot of the working class people supported him. John Kerry, yes, he was ridiculously wealthy. Yes, he married a woman that was a Heinz franchisor, multi-bajillionaire, whatever you want to call her, who spoke the ridiculously accent that people didn't like and all this other stuff. He's still related to the working class because John Kerry had one extenuating circumstance and factor that's someone that Mitt Romney doesn't have as much of, and that is John Kerry got drafted and went into Vietnam. I actually think he volunteered for Vietnam, if I remember correctly. Someone may correct me on that. Anyway, the bottom line is John Kerry served in Vietnam. He went to a country, a foreign country, that he may or may not have agreed with the war at the time, and he looked back on as something that he didn't see as the right decision for this country to make, and a lot of people saw as getting involved in Vietnam was a wrong decision for this country. But he still went there. He served with his brothers in arms, risked his ass getting blown up, and something like that is something that the working class could say, yeah, you know what? He may be a rich white motherfucker, but man, he took his ass to Vietnam and served. What can you say Mitt Romney did? What is relatable to the working class that Mitt Romney did? You tell me. Anyway, Mitt Romney, again, rich privileged white guy versus the president that basically had an abysmal 4 years in office. But Osama bin Laden got shot and doesn't really have anything to hide. It's not so much that Barack Obama did a lot of things that are considered screw-ups. It's that Barack Obama didn't do much of anything. Is that enough to get him not elected? I don't think so. I think he's going to win this election in a landslide. I see a 5 to 6 point victory for Barack Obama. Especially when you see after the Republican convention that states like North Carolina are still a toss-up state. How's that possible? North Carolina is usually a party-line Republican supporter for the president. How the hell is something like that still a toss-up state? How the hell did Mitt Romney, did he even win a southern state? Those states that always turn red at the presidential election. I remember seeing Newt Gingrich winning quite a few of them. How is that possible? He's the #1 candidate that had struggled in the southern states. And this guy, people see him as winning the presidency? People see this guy winning the presidency after more and more factors come out, after you see those debates where I'm sure Barack Obama more than once is going to say, hey, where are your tax returns at, asshole? When you start seeing shit like that, now granted his tax returns may eventually be released, so don't strike me down if they eventually did get released, because I was unaware of it, because I can't see into the future. Anyway, and yes, I know partials of his tax returns were released, so, I get that, but let's be realistic. Anyway, so, who am I voting for? I'll get to that at the very end. One thing, though, and mark my words, this will be the most entertaining thing of this election. Mark my words. And this is something that usually gets overlooked and people don't care about because usually it's the 3 presidential debates that people focus on. When Ryan Paul and Joe Biden face off for the vice presidential debate, make sure you have a full bowl of popcorn, sodas, beers, everything, because that is going to be a spectacle beyond belief. My God. Joe Biden is a person who's been basically told, sit there, know your role, shut your mouth. Because when he opens his mouth, he sticks his foot firmly into it. Now, Ryan Paul is someone who may or may not be known for sticking his foot in his mouth as much as Joe Biden does, but he is someone who will speak his mind. And when Joe Biden pushes the issue, Ryan Paul is going to push right back. And this is going to be one of the most entertaining things you're going to see in American politics. Trust me. So, alright, we got rich privileged white guy against uneventful guy who's done basically nothing in office the past 4 years. Who am I voting for? None of the above. I'm not even going to vote for either of these two. In fact, I don't think I even may vote. No, I'll vote. But anyway, you guys may vote and you guys may be adamant for one guy over the other, and I know someone's going to, be a hardcore Romney supporter who's going to say, oh, he's relatable to the working class because of this and this and this and this and this and this and this, and I'm going to go, okay, calm down. Yeah, partial tax returns, okay. I seriously doubt I'm going to vote for Barack Obama again. I can't vote for someone who I felt has done pretty much nothing. Mitt Romney, again, I see him as just someone who just can't relate to me at all. Now, does it mean these extenuating circumstances have to be decisions that decide who you vote for or not? No, it doesn't. But I can tell you right now, it's enough to turn me off from voting for either of these two people. So, I don't know, maybe I'll write in Homer Simpson. But above all else, I will vote because I take pride in voting for things like referendums that might be on the ballot, the smaller, circuit court elections that decide what judges get in office or seated behind the courts, and just other shit like that, mayor and all that good shit. Because so many people don't vote and just don't care because they hate the presidency or hate American presidents and shit like that. Or I'd be like, well, why not vote when, there's a referendum about your property taxes or school taxes, stuff like that. And it's like, I don't understand why people don't care about voting for things like that. Like, yeah, okay, you hate presidents and you hate the candidates and you hate the political system. Have a say in what your taxes are and shit like that. Because often you'll see those votes thrown on a off-year election because they know a minority of people are going to turn out to vote for that shit. So, above all else, vote if you can. If you don't, I won't hold it against you, nor will I care. But I'll be at the polls. So, this is the Archfiend. I'll see you at the polls. Except you non-voting scumbag. I'm just kidding. I still like you. Have a great day, everyone.